Okay, so we are live tonight. First and foremost, welcome everyone, whether you are watching with us in Women Who Lift, or if you're watching on my personal page, or if you're watching on YouTube, something we're trying out for the very first time. I'm super excited that we finally set up these live interviews on YouTube. No matter where you're watching, first of all, welcome. My name is 𝗬𝗲. I am the co-founder of Women Who Lift Israel. We are Israel's only fully bilingual group dedicated to empowering women through strength training. Me and my co-founder, Sarah, we started these live interview series specifically because we wanted to present our members and our community with inspirational female role models, athletes, specialists, physicians, everything that could possibly help you guys get more motivation, more information, and simply become better and more empowered in your strength journeys. So tonight I have with me, I am so excited. I have been looking forward to this interview all week, I'm not gonna lie, because tonight we have with us Dr. Sharone Cohen. Dr. Sharone, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for your time tonight. We really appreciate it, and we are just so honored to have you on our live interview series.
Thanks. I'm also really excited. I think any forum where we can talk about empowering women and training and lifestyle changes, which are my favorite subjects, is always good. And especially in Israel, we don't always get the chance to talk about these things. And the more we talk about it, the stronger we'll all be, I guess.
Absolutely, I 100% agree with that. And so I want to go ahead and jump right in because we have a wonderful hour-long interview with you today. For everyone who's watching, we're going to go through our questions, but if at any point you have a question or you want to tell Dr. Cohen how wonderful she is or anything at all, feel free to comment and we will feature your comments and your questions throughout the interview, and at the end of the interview, we'll also go through questions from the crowd. So I want to start off right away by getting to know you. So tell us about yourself, who you are, where you're from, how you ended up in Israel, and also anything else you'd like us to know about you.
Okay, so I guess I have kind of a unusual background. I tried a lot of different interests and different things that eventually led me to where I am today. I'm originally from Wisconsin in the US, which is in the Midwest, if anybody doesn't know. And it's where the 70s show was filmed, which most people actually know that one. I grew up there to two parents who were Israelis that moved to the US and had all of us kids there. And I grew up always with a Zionist kind of background and a lot of trips to Israel throughout my childhood, and we were always really connected. My parents spoke Hebrew with us at home. So somewhere I always knew that at some point I'd come back to Israel. I just didn't know exactly when. I went to University of Wisconsin-Madison in my undergrad. I had a scholarship for rowing.
Wow.
And so we competed in the Big Ten, and rowing was a really big sport in Wisconsin. We had a huge team. And I only learned how to row in college. I did a lot of sports in high school, but we didn't have rowing in Wisconsin growing up. And I fell in love with that sport. And after college, I kind of wasn't sure exactly what path to take. I knew I always wanted to work with people, but at first I thought I'd be an outdoor educator. So I went to Colorado for a couple of years, and I was a ski and snowboard instructor. And I worked, yeah, I've done almost all sports except for like ball sports, like basketball and soccer. I didn't get into too much, but other than that, I've done almost all other kind of sports. And so I worked as a ski and snowboard instructor, and we also had rafting and kayaking in the summer and like a ropes course. And it was this company where people with all different kinds of diseases or illnesses or backgrounds or disabilities or any type of issue could come And we had special equipment, like for people who are in wheelchairs. We did skiing and sit-down skiing equipment, and ropes course, like especially with different kind of like connections where you can hook the person up to the ropes course even if they don't have functioning arms or legs. Also brain injury patients and everything. So it was the first time where I got experience with a medical side with people with all different kinds of backgrounds, and it was really great because for 2 years I worked there, and I really got to see a lot of even rare diseases like Angelman's syndrome, which is a condition that you don't see very often. And we got the chance to work with people in an outdoor setting and doing physical activity, and I fell in love with that combination. And you could really see, even with people who have problems communicating, and even like with autism, like very complex autistic cases that didn't communicate very well, you would take them down a ski slope, and at the end you could just see the joy pouring out, even if they couldn't really communicate. Yeah, and that was the first time where I really had the chance to see how sport and medicine can connect and really change people's lives. And I really believe in that, and that's the passion that drives me today also. I also was really interested in naturopathic medicine and nutrition, and so along the way I also studied those things. I have a really wide background. I've been studying for a really, really long time. And I don't regret any of it, because it's definitely given me an ability to relate to a lot of different patients, and to also have knowledge about a lot of different things, even if today I don't necessarily practice or believe in certain aspects of alternative medicine, or sometimes I feel like Western medicine is more appropriate for a certain case, but at least I have the knowledge and the understanding to see the big picture. And I feel like it gives me a really big advantage working with patients, because everyone comes with their own type of background, and I can relate to that. And so anyway, after a while of doing that and also competing in rowing, and I decided to come to Israel, and I was on the Israeli national rowing team for a while, and I represented Israel abroad. And then I started working as a kayaking instructor at Hilton Beach, and I worked there for a couple of years, and we did sea kayaking and river kayaking. And then I found out about the 4-year medical school program in Israel, which is the concept that medical school works in the US also. But in Israel, it was like a new concept, and it was for people who already have a first degree in something that's in the science backgrounds. And then you can complete 4 years of the medical training, and that's the program that I enrolled in. And that's it. And I chose family medicine because the most important thing to me in medicine is the whole treating the patient and seeing the whole picture, and getting a chance to sit with the patient and with their family and really get to know somebody. And it's something that there's very few other specializations where you get a chance to really see the whole person. And I also did sports medicine, which isn't a specialization on its own yet in the world. It's kind of like you need a certain specialty, and then you can do sports medicine as an add-on. And of course, it's what I'm interested in, and it gives me a lot of perspective with the orthopedic side of things, which most people have all kinds of orthopedic problems. So that's it. And so now I'm a family medicine, sports medicine doc in Israel.
That is absolutely incredible. And you are also incredibly humble, because you were also the 2016 Fittest Woman in Israel, and you also competed 4 times in CrossFit Regionals with Team CrossFit Tel Aviv. Is that true?
CrossFit TLV. I forgot to correct you about that. There's two CrossFit that had similar names, and one is in downtown Tel Aviv, and that's CrossFit Tel Aviv. It's still around. And CrossFit TLV, we were in North Tel Aviv, and we closed in 2018. But that's the team that I represented, and our coach was Yaron Nof. And almost anyone in Israel who's done CrossFit at some point has been in our box or went through the box or competed with everybody. And yeah, I competed in CrossFit a lot. I kind of did it because after rowing, I wanted to keep being active and I wanted something that was less time consuming, or so I thought. So I found out about CrossFit, and actually, because I came from an aerobic background, the thing I was worried about, you know, it sounds really funny to say, but was the heavy lifting, and I didn't want to get injured, and I didn't have a lot of experience with weightlifting. And I'm really glad I did that because it opened me up to the whole world of powerlifting and strength and things that I only like touched the very base of when I was an endurance athlete. And it's also helped me just get stronger and more fit. And I think it's really important when you look just in general about like healthy aging and what you want for your body as you get older. And I'm really glad I got exposed to the weight training side. But yeah, competed a lot, and as a master's and also in the regular age division, even though I was older than everybody, and in teams and internationally also. And even just before Corona started, we had some big competitions on the line that got canceled, and we'll see what happens.
Yes. Well, that is absolutely incredible. And as someone who is meeting you for the very first time, even though it's virtually, I first of all want to say congratulations. That's such an amazing accomplishment that I am like so in awe of. I think there's some people who agree with me. Someone anonymously is giving you a round of applause, and I think you absolutely deserve it. So my next question is that since you have competed 4 times with Team CrossFit Tel Aviv, and not only that, you were also the fittest woman in Israel in 2016. How has your competitive career impacted your view of sports medicine over the years?
Well, I've been competing since I was almost 4 years old. I competed in rhythmic gymnastics and swimming and athletic, like track and field, and then rowing, and then CrossFit. And being an athlete, I think, is really important for someone who wants to work with athletes, because you have to, first of all, understand the craziness that most of us have as competitive athletes. I don't think that there's many competitive athletes who are exactly sane. All of us are a little crazy, and it's okay. But if you don't come from that world, it's really hard to understand. Like if someone is injured and you're a doctor and you see them and you say, just stop doing what you're doing and rest. But if you're an athlete, you're like, you can understand why it's so hard for that person to rest, or why the competition that's coming up is so important for them, or you know, all the other factors that go into being a competitive athlete. So I'm really, really glad that I had the chance to do so many different kinds of sports. Also, endurance athletes are really different from strength athletes. The whole mindset behind training, and a lot of times the personality even, and everything, there's a lot of differences between people, and I think people generally go towards sports that fit their personality kind of. And so being able to have done a lot of different sports also helps me a lot as a physician. I think there's a lot of things also doing team sports and being part of, for example, I was on the lightweight women's rowing team. I think it opened me up to seeing a lot of issues that arise with women in sports, and especially in the teenage years and in like early college years, that also have helped me a lot as a physician. Different things like eating disorders, for example, or overtraining, or even competitiveness between female athletes and how you can help a team bond together. Those are all things that like I've experienced firsthand with throughout the years. And I think it also gives me a ton of perspective when I'm dealing with patients and trying to help people. And I think there's a lot of similarities between competitions and situations in medicine. Like all the emergency room situations really remind me of competitions. Every time that I have, you know, an emergency with a patient, you get all the adrenaline that you do during a competition. You have to think really clearly. You have to act quickly, but not too quickly. So I feel like the years of training in competitions have given me a really good base for medicine also. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely see how there can be a lot of similarities. I can definitely see how the mindset can be very, very similar.
Yeah.
So since you have had quite a long competitive career, and then not only that, you mentioned you've been doing all sorts of sports more or less your whole life. Have you had any revelations, life revelations that have really changed your perspective throughout your career, not just in sports medicine, but also just beyond that? And I guess if you also, it's hard sometimes to ask people who have competed so long for a favorite moment, but if you had a favorite moment from competing, what would it be?
Let's start with the revelation. The revelations. I have revelations every day. I think I'm constantly trying to learn and improve and become, like, evolve. I think it might sound a little bit cheesy, but I really feel like every year I look back and I see how I've become a different athlete throughout the years. One thing I've definitely learned as I've gotten older is how to just chill. And like, I've had some coaches in the past when I was younger who would be like, just relax, just chill out, you know, nothing, you can't plan everything. You can't always go exactly by the book. So personally,
If my boyfriend is watching right now, he's probably thinking, wow, Tamar needs this exact advice.
But I think it's true. I think anyone who has passion and drive and is goal oriented can get into that way of thinking where you get really focused and you feel like you have to do something exactly by the plan. And I think there's two things that factor in here. One is just getting older and learning and seeing that life is stronger than you or your brain sometimes, and you really just have to go with the flow sometimes, because fighting it sometimes can just cause injuries, and you know, and your performance will go down. Another thing that's happened is this whole corona thing in the last year, which I think has just forced everyone to come to terms with the fact that sometimes we can't control things. We don't know what's going to happen, especially box owners and gym owners and personal trainers in this time have had to become so creative and learn, you know, like think on their feet and reinvent themselves. And athletes too, anyone who is training for any type of goal had to deal with a lot of problems. I've talked with a lot of people, and even me myself, the whole notion of motivation really came into question in this last year. You know, when you're in your apartment and trying to train, and again, for the, you know, the 6th month in a row with the one dumbbell that you have, you sometimes start asking yourself, like, why are you doing this? What am I doing this for? And I think this one year, it can be a metaphor for like our whole life and our space as an athlete. And it can really teach a lot of things. I know for me, it taught me to just, sometimes you just need to move, and it doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't necessarily always have to be that, you know, that you're exactly working on this specific weakness right now. There's periods in life where you just need to keep moving and keep doing something. And at the end, things work out. I think that was my big revelation in the last couple of years.
I like that a lot.
And then you're asking about my favorite moment, and that's really hard because I love competing. It's in my blood. I've been doing it forever. And I love the feeling of going to a competition, and every competition is special and different. And it's really hard for me to compare between different sports that I've competed in, and it's hard for me to compare between the team experience and the individual experience. Every event has been so different, and I think the things that I remember the most about the competitions are the events where I performed the worst, because those were moments where I had to face a lot of emotions, and sometimes you feel embarrassed, and sometimes, especially in CrossFit, where you're like on a stage and people are watching, and you have to come and do, say, like a max lift and it doesn't work. There's a lot of things that you learn, that I learned about myself in the moments where I felt like the weakest or the least effective as an athlete. And those moments also gave me a lot of fire when I went back to train after the competitions to, to like highlight exactly where I'm still not doing well as an athlete and what I can do to improve, I think.
I think that's an excellent moment, and something that I've found since we've done now quite a few of these interviews, and this is a question that we ask a lot of people who compete. And it's interesting you say that, because I think that is a common thread between different types of competitive athletes. No matter what sport it was, we've had someone from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we've had powerlifters, we've had weightlifters, we've had runners. Whenever we asked what was your most memorable moment that taught you the most, that you felt like changed you into a slightly different person, they all said, first of all, it's hard to choose. And then they all said, I remember this one time that I struggled and I learned from that struggle. And I think that's something that's a really, really important take-home message. And that's why I really loved that moment. And that was an amazing answer. So then moving on to our next topic, because I want to take advantage of the fact that I am right now in an interview with a family medicine and sports medicine physician. And to anyone out there who has any sports medicine or athletic ability related questions, please feel free to comment below while we go through. But in the meantime, let's discuss injury recovery.
Okay.
I have heard through podcasts that I've read or podcasts that I've listened to that something that people truly believe is what makes an athlete really excel is their ability to let their body recover. From a sports medicine perspective, what exactly are the key essentials to injury recovery?
Well, I think I just wanted to make clear, because there's kind of two issues that you brought up in what you just said. One is just the general idea of recovery without an injury. Just how do you recover after long trainings? And even someone who's just starting out, for example, and suddenly feels really sore, but they want to keep training, how do you develop that? That's one issue. And another issue is what you were saying about the injuries, because that one is if you have a specific injury and what you do to deal with that. And those are two separate things. I'll start with just the general recovery. There's multi-million-dollar industry out there that's aimed at getting all of us to spend money on all kinds of fancy supplements and recovery tools and all this stuff. I think a lot of that stuff is nice. But if you're not sleeping at least 8 hours a night, and if you're not eating properly, nothing you take and nothing you buy on iHerb is going to help you. So sleep, I mean, it's just proven in so many articles and research that our bodies recover when we sleep. Our muscles recover when we sleep. All our hormonal systems balance out when we sleep. And when we don't sleep, there's a million problems. Also with the cortisol release and different stress hormones, fat absorption and fat loss are affected by lack of sleep, and just muscle recovery and performance. All of it has been shown scientifically in many different ways. So really, really, really the basis. Some people need a little bit less sleep. Some people need more. But I'm saying 8 hours is like the ideal, where if everyone could sleep 8 hours would be amazing. Now, of course, people can't, because, some people have small children. Some people have crazy jobs. Some people have night shifts at the ER. And in that case, I mean, it's just to try and get as much sleep as you can during the times that you can. And again, I want to make a distinction here between people who are competitive athletes and are training, like twice a day and have major goals. And then there's people who are more recreational competitive athletes. And then there's just the everyday people who kind of just want to be fit. And of course, as you become more serious about what you're doing, your lifestyle has to be more fitting to your goals if that's what you want to accomplish. It's really, really hard to be a high level competitive athlete and, you know, work shift work. Although, I mean, there are a few people who manage to do it, but it's not ideal. And I'm sure that their performance would be better if they could sleep more properly. As far as injury recovery goes, I'm all about the belief in movement. I am a huge believer in movement to create strength and to return mobility after injuries. Even though I've studied sports medicine and, you know, my best friends are all orthopedic surgeons and they probably are never going to talk to me after hearing this, but I really believe that, like, if you can not do surgery and you can try to heal your body without any kind of invasive way, and it's an option, and it's not always. Sometimes you need surgery, but if there's any chance to try, you know, non-invasive ways, then you should do it first, definitely. And I've seen it with all my patients. I prescribe physiotherapy to everyone, and I also show a lot of exercises in my office. Sometimes my boss comes in and I have the rubber bands and we're doing all kinds of exercises, and he's like, "What's going on?" But I mean, that's what we do when people come to see me, whether they like it or not. We do all kinds of mobility exercises and strength exercises, and I'm a firm believer in that. And also, if you have an injury, I think it's really important to have someone guide you back into fitness. If you try to do it on your own and you don't have a background in training, you don't exactly know what you're doing, then you do risk getting injured again. So any personal trainer who has some experience, or a physiotherapist or something like that, can definitely help your people's recovery from an injury. I think it's really important, and it's worth it to spend that money on getting better. I think some people don't like to, but you have to look at the big picture, and I think it's really worth it.
Absolutely, and I think that's especially why these live interviews are important, because we're trying to really send this message to not only women, but simply people of any walk of life to prioritize your health. And we're trying to help people, empower people to do exactly that. So that was an excellent answer. Moving on to the topic of food.
Okay.
And I say that because it's like such a huge, daunting topic. It seems like every time the topic of food comes up, emotions come up with it, because it is an emotional topic for a lot of people. There are 100 different diets out there, maybe 1,000. A lot more opinions than that, even, on what's the right diet, macronutrients, calories, proteins, all the different keywords. But let's talk really from overall health and sports medicine's perspective. What are the essential building blocks of a nutritious diet, of a healthy daily diet?
So this is something that, of course, I've studied a lot about. I also just want to start out by saying that I'm not a certified nutritionist. So I have studied a lot of nutrition, but when I come up with a question of like an actual diet plan, I always send out to nutritionists. I have a couple that I work with that I really trust. And everyone has a different opinion about this. My basic belief is that a diet has to be tailored to the person, because, like you said, it's not just food. It's also the whole emotional thing that goes along with food. And I mean, this is an issue for women and for men and for everybody. You have to find a diet that just works for you. You have to, at the end of the day, you need to eat food that you like eating, because if you don't enjoy eating, you're never going to stick to whatever plan you decide to do. And the other thing is that I don't even like the word diet, because diet makes you think like it's like a plan that you're going to do, and at some point you're going to stop doing it. It's a lifestyle, and I really believe that. And I think when people start thinking that way, it also just makes it a lot easier. You have to find a way of eating and a way of sleeping and a way of exercising that you can maintain throughout your entire life, where it doesn't feel like a chore, and it doesn't feel like, you know, you're sitting there with a plate of rice and like dry chicken and wanting to throw up, and you're like, I'm eating this again. It's not, you're not going to do it. You're going to go to McDonald's and eat a huge hamburger with, you know, because you feel like you're not letting yourself do what you want. So over the years, I've really seen the most important thing and that people have been able to do to maintain success with the dieting and the body composition is to, first of all, eat foods that they like. Second of all, I think no matter what type of diet you choose to do, I think eating healthy, nutritious foods, for example, things that are not in a package, anything that you have to cook is going to be better for you than, you know, anything that you have to open in a bag. Trying to eat a lot of colors in a day, and real colors, not like 𝗧𝗢𝗡𝗚𝗧. So just get your vegetables. A lot of people get into kind of a rut where they eat the same thing every single day. Try to just mix it up. So you eat, make sure on your plate you have like green and red and yellow, and you're already halfway there. I mean, it's awesome. And then for me, I believe in a well-balanced diet. I don't think carbohydrates are horrible. I feel that athletes, especially performance athletes, need carbohydrates. I know all the keto people out there are probably freaking out right now, but this is just, again, it's my opinion, and I know that people have other opinions. But for me and my experience and my my different experimentations on my performance, when I ate carbs, it made me feel a lot better. My body composition was much better. I was able to lose fat and build muscle much more easily. And again, everybody reacts differently. And so I think it's very important also here to have someone you trust who leads you, maybe when you're first starting out, or if you don't have as much experience, so you can get to know your body, but also have someone make sure you're getting enough nutrients in. And then once you get to know yourself more and you can figure it out, then you can play around with, you know, by yourself and figure out how things work. I also try to stay away from, you know, all the processed proteins and supplements as much as I can. Sometimes I have to use them just because I don't have time to cook. And even then, I try to choose the ones that are the least processed, that are the more like natural kind of bars and stuff like that. But whenever I can, I try to eat real food. And I also think that in everything in life, if anything is too radical and seems too crazy to you, it's probably not a good idea. I mean, that's just how I see it. And I see it usually with people also with their results.
Amazing. So then moving on then to the specific topic of protein, which is something that comes up very often in our group. And I'm in a few different weightlifting, powerlifting groups. And I think that's probably one of the most common things that comes up. I was hoping you could give our viewers kind of a protein 101. A lot of people who are very, very new to strength training are saying, I've heard protein is really, really good while you're strength training. I should eat more protein, but they don't necessarily understand why. Can you give us a little quick intro, protein 101?
Sure. So our muscles are built of things called amino acids, which are the very molecules that build up proteins. And in order to build muscle, you have to have enough of these free amino acids to go into your muscles and help the actual muscle get bigger. If you don't eat enough protein, the body will start using the muscle for energy and actually break down the muscle tissue, and you won't be able to undergo the process of hypertrophy, which is actually having your muscles grow. So anyone who's not getting enough calories in general, it will be really hard for them to get stronger just because they don't have the fuel for the muscles to work. it's not just protein, it's also total calories. It's important for people to understand that if they're in a caloric deficit, which means they're not eating enough calories, even if all the calories they eat are protein, they still will have a hard time building muscle. Someone who's eating the amount of calories that they need will have an easier time to build muscle. Protein, just like any other food source, carbohydrates or fat, if we eat too much of it, our body doesn't know what to do with it, and it gets stored as fat. So even if people are doing like a crazy protein intake, that protein will end up just getting stored as fat. So there is such a thing as eating too much protein, and we don't need to eat too much protein. The other thing is that the kidneys can suffer because the kidneys are what filter out the excess breakdown products of proteins. And anyone who has any type of underlying kidney condition or has diabetes or any type of baseline disease needs to be careful about overloading with protein, because it's like, if you want to think about it, it's like you're making it harder for your body to work. You're giving it this fuel that it doesn't have any need for it, and now it needs to get rid of it, and it has to work at getting rid of it, and it can just overload the body. So also competitive athletes who are training a lot, the kidneys need to work really hard to filter out all the breakdown products of the muscle, which naturally occur when you do sports, because we injure the muscle. That's what training actually is. So it makes it harder to recover if you're intaking too much protein. So how do you know how much protein to eat? So there's a general number that says between 1.6 to 1.8 grams of protein per kilo of your body weight. And that's like a really general rule of thumb. You can vary from that a lot depending on your training, depending on your metabolism, and depending on your gender. Also depending on the type of training that you're aiming for and what your goals are. So again, it's a really general answer, and you have to, I have to see the person who's who's in front of me, and together we can tailor, a plan that's more fit for them. But in general, someone who's active and training, 1.6 to 1.8 grams per kilo is usually pretty good. There used to be a lot of debate about the timing of protein intake and how much to eat at one time, and whether there used to be a thought that you can only absorb like 20 grams of protein at once, and now today people say that's not true and you can intake larger amounts of protein. I also think right after training, it's important to intake protein. Again, this depends a lot on what your goals are. So if someone's goals are performance 100%, it's really important to intake protein right after your training, as well as throughout the day. If someone wants more weight loss, then also intaking protein after the training can help mitigate hunger and can help prevent like eating later on at night, for example, eating carbs, and can control the cravings a little bit more. But also you have to look at the person. So say a woman who's like a marathon runner, who's really small and weighs 45 kilos, her daily protein needs are going to be a lot different than a woman who's a weightlifter and weighs 70 kilos, and so everyone is a little bit different, but that's the basic kind of rule.
And so what if someone were to be intaking too much protein? What would be the type of physical signs that they might potentially show that may indicate to someone, oh, I might be eating too much protein?
So for example, someone who would feel like they're starting to gain weight and not understand why, because they're like eating really healthy, but eating too much protein, it might start getting stored as fat. And if there's changes in body composition, even though you're training and supposedly eating a healthy diet and you don't know why, that might be one thing. Another thing is it could cause extra water absorption. Maybe if you feel like you're bloated, you could check out how much protein you're intaking. Also, if you're doing blood tests and you see that there's any changes in the kidney function, that might give you a hint that you should check out what's going on. But those are basic.
Cool. Very good to know. So I want to jump over and take a spotlight look on your CrossFit career, because something that I know from CrossFit is that it takes just an incredible amount of mental strength. And especially, like you said, when you're in these competitions, you're on a stage and people are literally watching whether or not you can lift this super heavy weight. The amount of mental strength that you need in order to compete and do that is just something that astonishes me. How do you train your mental strength to prepare for a competition outside of CrossFit?
So mental training is something that's been really important to me my whole life, and I agree with you that CrossFit is very challenging because you never know exactly what's going to be in the competition. Like, you have a pretty good idea, but there can always be surprises. So you have to deal with like new movements and new skills all the time, which is very different from other sports. And also because it's everything. It's all it's all aspects of fitness in one. So just like being able to deal with training for so many different things is also something that's really challenging mentally. But in every sport that I've done, there's always been a huge mental aspect, and in all sports, if you're competing, your head is like 80% of the deal. Because people who, if you look at successful athletes, they weren't always the most successful ones. They weren't necessarily the most talented people, but they're definitely the most like crazy mentally ones. It's the person who has the ability to just say, I'm going to kick the shit out of all of you and I don't care. And that's who's going to win at the end. Like, even if they're not as good, even if they're not as strong, if they want it, that's who's going to win. And mental training for me, first of all, I really thrive in like the team environment and feeling that I have people around me who support me. That gives me a lot of strength. So more in the collegiate years, when I was part of a team, we would do a lot of mental training before the competition, of like lying on the floor and closing our eyes, and our coach would talk us through the race, and like literally like imagining exactly what's going to happen and how it's going to happen and and then there's going to be wind and this is going to happen, and just like closing your eyes and really going through exactly what's going to happen makes you come to the starting line feeling really, really confident and ready to go. And that's something that I also used for myself in CrossFit competitions. Is a lot of times before the events is like to try and picture what's going to happen and how I'm going to plan out the event. I don't always like to plan out exactly how I'm going to attack an event in CrossFit, because sometimes you don't know how you're going to react. And if you have this really rigid plan and it doesn't go exactly how you wanted it, sometimes it can be detrimental to you. That's also really, like say I have a Metcon with, I don't know what, like toes to bar, wall ball, and double unders. And then you start, you plan that you're going to do a round in 2 minutes and all this stuff. And then you start doing it and it's suddenly taking you longer than you thought. And it can shake you up. But if I found that for me, it just works better to, I know how I feel like in my aerobic state when I'm pushing. So I'm like, get myself to that state and just hold it for as long as I can, and less focus on the actual amount of movements I'm going to do. And I found that works for me really well in competitions. Definitely there were a lot of competitions in CrossFit where like you're faced with your weakness, or you're faced with something that you can't do, or even a skill that you've never done before, and or you haven't been able to do in training, and you have to deal with that. And I've had breaking points and crying and stuff like that, of course. And like I said before, and then you go home and you keep working on the skill, and maybe you never get good at it. You always know that, and it's going to show up in the events and you're going to have to do it. But slowly, things start to move. And then I think the most important thing also is to just keep comparing yourself to yourself, because you know, some people are like, I want a handstand walk and I want to do the obstacle course. And I'm like, but you can't even stand on your hands for 1 second. How you want to do an obstacle course? Like, and then you have to see, and like 2 months later, suddenly the person can hold a handstand for 5 seconds, and that's amazing. So, okay, you can't do the obstacle course yet, but look what you've accomplished in this time. And the same for all of us is always like, just look at the big picture and to get perspective on things.
Absolutely. And I love the way that you say you are literally training your mind like you're training your body. You let your body go through the motions when you're training for a competition. And why not let your mind, you know, really explore the motions as well from a mental standpoint? And that's actually something I've never thought of, and that's something new I'm going to try because I really like that a lot. I love that.
I think the mental side is like, today there's a lot more awareness about it, and people have mental coaches and they do a lot of training, but I think it's sometimes something that's really neglected by a lot of athletes, and it can totally change your game. Like if you're really successful but you have fear of performance or any type of thing that holds you back in competitions, and it's important for you to compete, then it's something that's definitely worthwhile to try and work on it. And there's really good sports psychologists in Israel. There's also really good coaches. I think, like, you know, the best coaches are mostly psychologists and a little bit of coach. And you also, you know, like if you can find someone that you connect to, they can really help you in that aspect too.
Absolutely. And so we also just generally want to bring awareness to women and strength training. I mean, we are, like we said, a women-only community. And in fact, we are Israel's only bilingual women-only community, which is something we're very, very proud of. But something we've heard from a lot of women, especially as they're just starting, or women who have been strength training a long time, but recall earlier days, and they all said at one point we were afraid of bulking up. Like me as well, when I was younger, I was terrified of strength training because I always thought I looked like a man. And now here I am into it, and I think I look very feminine. But so we just generally want to bring importance and awareness to women having muscle on their body. From a family medicine and sports medicine perspective, can you help us shed some light on why that is so important?
Definitely. I think not just for women, also for men, but of course, for everybody, having muscle and being strong makes you function better. And there's a shirt that I really like where it says it's harder to kill strong people. And it's true because, you know, like if you have to go to the grocery store and then you get 2 really big bags of groceries and you don't have any core muscles, and you're a man or a woman or you identify as trans, it doesn't matter. Anybody who's taking these bags is going to have problems carrying it if they don't have, you know, the strength to hold your body. I don't think it has anything to do with gender. It's just really important for everyone to have a strong core, to have strong arms, to be able to do the functional things that they do every day, which is the basis of functional fitness for everyone. And as we get older and have, especially people who have jobs who are sitting a lot, we lose the flexibility, we lose the strength that we have, and it affects everything. And it even affects how you feel about yourself. Like if you get up in the morning and you're like, oh, and this hurts and I can't move, and you know, it takes you 15 minutes to get going, which sometimes can happen if you're training a lot too. But say that it's because you're not mobile. It makes you feel old, even if you're 30 and this is happening to you. So definitely being able to move and staying, you know, having like a supple body, like there's that book, Supple Leopard, which I love about mobility, will help prevent problems. And even if you have an accident or if you fall and you're flexible and you're strong, the chances of you getting injured severely are much lower than if you're very stiff and you haven't moved and you don't have any muscle protecting your body. You can fracture bones really easily. This is especially important for women after menopause and when osteoporosis, which is when we lose the strength of in our bones. If women are frail and very skinny and don't have muscles, it increases the risk of having fractures in our spine and in our thigh bones and in our arms. And it's really hard to deal with those, especially I'm talking about like older women who break their thigh. You know, it's a really big problem. And for all women, just having strength, and I think it gives you also independence, knowing that like you can do anything. You don't need someone, you don't need a guy to come help you carry something heavy. You can carry the bag of dog food by yourself, or you can carry the kids by yourself. I think it's a good feeling, you know, it gives you confidence. About bulking up, this is a problem that we have with all of our people who come to train for the first time. And as a coach, I've had so many women be like, I don't want to have the 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗚𝗧 here, which is like, I don't want to have the hanging thing under my triceps, but I don't want to have muscles. And I'm like, well, what do you think it is that makes it not hang down? You need to have muscle there, or else it's just going to be hanging. And I think that people are really scared because they don't know something. So when they don't know what's going to happen, it's replaced it's replaced with fear. And once they start realizing and seeing what's happening to their body, I think most women are really happy with the results. And at the end of the day, I think most women want to look toned. And to look toned, you need muscle. It's there's like the entity of skinny fat, which is being really, really low body weight, but being high fat percentage. And to me, that's not a pretty look. I don't know. Everyone has their own opinion. Again, it's very individual, and you have to do what's right for you. But I think that people look a lot more attractive when they're toned and they have muscle. I don't think that it makes a female look masculine. But again, it's totally an opinion. And we do live in Israel, and I have to say that I've had my fair share of comments from guys about like, what's going on with those arms, and are you gonna beat me up, and you're so strong, why are you lifting those weights, and your uterus is gonna fall out. And you know, everybody has something to say because it's Israel. But it's a personal preference. I don't think women should be scared of strength training. I think it will only help everyone and help you burn more calories and be more fit also.
Absolutely. And so that's exactly why we started doing exactly this, is because we're trying to spread this message to as many people as we can that just try strength training. And the more I hear from people who try it for the first time, the more they say, I wish I had tried this sooner. It feels so good. And it's not just like looking great and getting in shape and fitting into jeans is all nice and well, but there's also those like little victories in life, like when I was able to pick up dog food without having to ask my neighbor for help and carry it up the stairs, or my co-admin said her son didn't want to walk anymore and she was able to take him on her shoulders, something that she couldn't do a year prior to that. And so getting in shape and looking nice is all great, but there's also those like genuine victories in life that I think are so important.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And again, I think like you have to look at and ask yourself, this goes back to what we talked about before, the idea of motivation, like what motivates you? I don't like focusing on looks, and like a lot of the sports industry focuses on how people look, and if you open Instagram, that's what it is. It's everyone doing deadlift and having the camera on their butt, and so we can see how nice their butt is. But I mean, to me, it's a byproduct. Having a nice body is so opinion based. You're never gonna please everyone. Someone out there is always gonna hate how you look, and someone out there is gonna love how you look. And the bottom line is, it doesn't matter, because the only one that really matters is you and what you think. And I think sometimes focusing on image is not healthy, and it can become, of course, if we take it to like eating disorders or something like that, it can become very unhealthy. And I think, like you said, it's really helpful to have goals. And in training, whether it's endurance or strength or anything, when you start to accomplish your goals in training, it makes you feel awesome. And then it doesn't matter, you know, then you can be like, I don't care because I know I can do this and I'm strong and I'm good or I'm fast or whatever. And I don't care what you think I look like in my thong or in my bikini. And, you know, it doesn't matter because it gives you confidence to succeed in sports, especially in little girls. I think it's really important to teach them to get that confidence because it's like an inner confidence that they will carry with them their whole life and be like, I got this. Yeah.
That's inner confidence. If I could go back, I think I would start strength training earlier because like younger Tamar with that inner confidence, whew, I would have taken over the world. So we're coming close to the end of our interview and this hour has just flown by. If anybody out there still has a question left, feel free to write it down underneath this video. But my very last question for you for this wonderful interview is a lot of our members in our group, Women Who Lift Israel, are completely new to strength training. According to the data that we have, almost half of them, approximately 45% of our female community of over 900 women are completely new to all forms of strength training. It can be really hard and really daunting to know where to start, especially now with gyms being closed and, you know, lockdown and all of these things. For someone who is really just starting out, a total newbie, what advice do you have for them on how to get started?
I think with strength training, it's not the same as running where you can just pick up a pair of running shoes and start to run a little bit each day. There's a big factor in learning the right technique because when you're dealing with weights, you can get injured if you're not doing the technique properly. And learning the base for movements is super important. In this group, I know I've seen there's a ton of really good personal trainers and friends of mine that I know are members of this group. And there's so much available leadership out there to teach people how to do things correctly. And it's so worth it. When you're starting out and you have no idea what you're doing, just take a personal trainer, take somebody for 4 lessons, just invest a little bit of money. They'll give you the basis. They'll teach you, you know, the few exercises to get you started. And you can really learn how to do things correctly. And I think also, you know, of course, it's really hard right now because there's no group classes and the gyms are closed. But in ideal times, I would definitely say finding someone who can help you out at the beginning is a game breaker because it's really, really hard to learn how to do it on your own. And when you don't have any feedback about your movement, you don't know if you're doing it right or if you're not doing it right, you do risk injury. And things are not that complicated and not so overwhelming when you have someone by your side helping you out and showing you how to do things. And even just learning how to use the machines correctly at the gym, or once we'll be able to go back to the gyms, if any will survive this. And you know, right now, if people want to get started like tomorrow, there's a lot of trainers in this group who can meet you at the park and bring equipment and, you know, teach you the basics. There's a lot of body weight stuff that you can start doing that can really get you stronger and give you a great base before you start doing weights. And that's my best advice, is like have someone follow along with you in the process. And it's always better than being alone, that's for sure.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And I think that getting a really great trainer is vital, and also having like a really good connection with your trainer, because you really need someone who is like your cheerleader, your person. I have literally called my trainer crying because that's how like close I felt with my trainer. And so I think that's also very important and a very, very key piece of advice to women who are just starting. And that is really the end. It's been a very fast hour, I have to say. We do have one question that someone has submitted anonymously. It's a bit of a longer question, but I will read it for you. she's talking about sciatica. She's a hairdresser. She's on her feet a lot, and she has a lot of sciatica issues. She's worried that it will get worse, and so she's wondering what could you possibly recommend. Of course, I would think that with something like this, it would be best to actually get to examine the person, but just generally with sciatica, do you have anything that you could possibly recommend?
So of course, like if you're in the Kupa in Clalit, you're welcome to come see me. And with sciatica, what I found that helps the most is working on the core. It really helps to alleviate a lot of pain. So all the exercises, like hip thrust, where you lie on your back and you lift your butt in the air and you really squeeze your glutes tightly. The action of activating your glutes really reduces the pain that people feel in sciatica. So any type of exercise where you're working on your stomach muscles, on your glutes, even very gently single leg deadlift, or any type of exercises where your glute has to engage, will reduce the pressure. There's a lot of things you can also do with bands. Like, I don't know if you know the technical terms, but monster walk, where you put a band around your legs and you kind of walk sideways, leaving tension in the band all the time. If you want, I can write you down the exercises later. But in general, glute activating exercises help.
Awesome. So for those out there with sciatica, core exercises to strengthen your core strength, also glute exercises. And if you're in Clalit, sciatica or not sciatica, you're more than welcome to come see Dr. Sharone Cohen. And Dr. Cohen, it has been a privilege. And it has been a really, really informative hour. I've actually learned quite a lot. I have personally taken a lot from this interview. So thank you so much.
Sure, it was fun. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. And to everyone out there who is watching with us tonight, thank you for tuning in. You can find Dr. Cohen on Instagram. There's a link in the text in this interview. And again, if you're in Clalit, she is located in Tel Aviv. You're more than welcome to
Ramat Sharon.
Ramat Shalon. Oh my goodness, so sorry. She is located in Ramat Shalon under Clalit, and you're more than welcome to come see her for all your family medicine and sports medicine needs. Thank you so much, Dr. Cohen. It has been wonderful.
Thanks. Thanks for listening.
Have a great night, everyone. Bye.
Bye.